Welcome everyone to Fundamentals of Kabbalah and Chassidut. Tonight we are concluding our series on the spiritual nature of water. I don't remember exactly, but I think there's around 12 classes altogether, and this will be the concluding class. So for those who have followed the series, back in Elul and Tishrei, we went almost week by week as we approached the different holidays and discussed the connection of water to the month of Elul, water to Rosh Hashanah, water to Yom Kippur, water to Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah, and Simchas Torah. Tonight, because we're getting towards Chanukah, and this is the last class in the series, I want to discuss two other holidays that have a very strong connection to water. And we'll start with Chanukah. On the surface, it doesn't seem to have anything to do with water, but there is one spiritual intent, one kavanah from the Arizal that I want to give over now, which hopefully everyone will remember when Chanukah comes, and we'll see a very, very deep connection to water. So we'll start with the blessing. When we light the candles on Chanukah, so we say a blessing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. That is the typical Ashkenazic rendering of this blessing. But the Arizal, about 500 years ago, took out the word shel. Instead of saying lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, he had it lahadlik ner Chanukah. Question is, why did he do this? Why did he think it was important that one of the words should be taken out? And so the answer is that with the word shel, lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, there are 14 words in the blessing. When you take out the word shel, you have 13 words to the blessing. We'll see in a minute the significance of that. By taking out the word shel and having it lahadlik ner Chanukah, so the acronym, the first letter of the last three words, lahadlik ner Chanukah, in a different order, spell nachal, nun chet lamed. The lamed is for lahadlik, the nun is ner, and the chet is Chanukah, but it spells out nachal. So this is one of the most beautiful and powerful meditations of the lights of Chanukah, meditating on the lights of Chanukah, is the Ari taught that when we light the lights from below, so the light goes up, fire always ascends. When we do the mitzvah from below, we draw down upon us a nachal of light. Remember, he took out the word shel, so now the last three words could be an acronym for nachal, a stream, a river. More precisely, a stream. So we envision, it's a visualization, it's a meditation, that as the lights go up, that it draws down a stream of light upon us. And we can envision standing in a waterfall of light. And this term, a river of light, a stream of light, so there's something to it scientifically, which we'll get to in a minute, but it's also poetically. the idea of a river of light. It's used by many poets, songwriters, as just a beautiful, powerful metaphor. And that's what the Ari gave over 500 years ago, that we can envision being engulfed in a waterfall of pure light. So now let's go back to now that the blessing has 13 words. So 13 is a very important number, and probably its most important usage is the 13 midot of rachamim, the 13 aspects of compassion. And the 13 aspects of compassion are envisioned coming from the highest of the Sfirot, Keter, and flowing down. Actually, the metaphor is through the beard, that there are 13 tikkunei dikna, 13 parts of the beard where the midot of rachamim flow into the world. So this is very, very connected to Rav Ginsburg's teachings that of the 10 sfirot, there's actually 13 inner dimensions. This is something we've mentioned many, many times. So here, along with envisioning a stream of light pouring over us, we can also have this idea that we're drawing down God's compassion into the world, and it's flowing from above to below, from the infinite into the finite worlds. So this is just a beautiful connection to water and the holiday of Chanukah. But now I want to just take it a little bit further, because here we're using the metaphor, a stream of light, a waterfall of light, a river of light. But the idea of a stream of light, so there's a deep connection between light and water. And that is, if we talk about a stream of light, so science has revealed that in essence, we just see light. But if you look at the subatomic makeup of light, there's a steady stream of photons, individual particles. When they're all, let's say, put together in a stream, then we experience, we don't see the individual photons. We don't experience that. We just see the light. But on a deeper dimension, it's a stream of photons, of individual photons. So that's one deep connection between water and light. And a second is that along with light being a stream of individual particles, photons, it's also a wave. And in science, this is considered a tremendous paradox. How can light operate or function or express itself, manifest itself as both a particle and a wave at the same time? In scientific terms, this is practically two opposites that cannot be like corresponded together, and that's why it's called a paradox. But both manifestations of light, whether a particle or a wave, have a connection to the way water functions in the world. Is ultimately water are individual drops, but when they're put together, you cannot distinguish between them. And we learned this previously, that Reb Shlomo explained very beautifully. He said the uniqueness of water, he used an example. He said, if you have an apple and you put another apple next to it, you have two apples now. You put a third apple, a fourth apple, a fifth apple. But when you look at the apples, even if you talk about them in the plural, you still can discern individual apples. He said, but with water, if you put one drop in a bowl and then you added another drop, they unify. You cannot tell, there's no difference between the first and the second drop. They become one unified whole. And so here we just have some beautiful ideas of connecting light and water. Even further, when science looks inside the atom, so we used to talk about the components of an atom as individual entities. There's a proton and there's a neutron and there's an electron. And now there's a host of subatomic particles. Every year they discover more and more particles as our instruments are more finely tuned. But now, from the teachings of quantum physics, we don't really relate to these particles as individual entities. They're all what are called wave functions. They're here, they're there, they're everywhere, all at the same time. And until they are observed, they have no position. They're in a wave function. They could be anywhere and everywhere simultaneously. Once they're observed, then they adopt a position. This is one of the great mysteries of quantum physics and science altogether, how that works. How does observation make or facilitate a particle, subatomic particle, to choose a fixed position that it can be now observed in? So all of this was just to show that there's a deep connection between water and light. So going back to the Arizal, when he talked about having the bracha be lahadlik ner Chanukah, so that the first letters could spell out nachal, a stream of light. So here the metaphor is actually quite real in the way that the world works, of water and light. So we talk about a river of light, a stream of light. It's very poetic, but there's something very, very fundamental about it. And then I just want to add one more thing, is that we know that sound, that they're literally sound waves. That's how sound reaches from an instrument to our ears, is through sound waves. So here we can connect now water and music and light. And that's why all three of those can be mesmerizing. I think everyone's had the experience of standing by a stream or a river or the beach and watching the waves of the ocean or a lake. It's very mesmerizing. The same thing with light, with fire. Being around a bonfire and just staring at the flames. Or hopefully everyone will do the same for the lights of Hanukkah. Not just light them and then give gifts and eat latkes, but to take the opportunity to meditate on the lights of Hanukkah. And music, of course, also can be very mesmerizing. And so I just want to share that when when my wife and I light Hanukkah candles and we're alone, I mean, for years with our children and grandchildren, but when we're alone, we always put on soft, mellow music, and we meditate to the lights with the benefit of beautiful music accompany the meditation. So I suggest that for everyone. It's a wonderful practice to meditate on the lights of Hanukkah with music. Now there's one other holiday that there's a deep connection with water, and that is Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is the 15th day of the month of Shvat. It is one of the 4 New Years. In the first Mishnah of the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, it describes 4 New Years. The New Year of Years, that's Rosh Hashanah. The New Year of Months, that is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The New Year of Tithing Cattle, this is the least one known, but it's considered a new year, is the first day of Elul. And the 4th one is Tu B'Shvat. But there is a disagreement as to what day Tu B'Shvat is. The others, it's clear when it is. And Beit Shammai says that the new year of the trees should be on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, the first day of the month of Shvat. And Beit Hillel says it should be on the 15th day. And we paskin in almost every case by Beit Hillel. So Tu B'Shvat, Tu actually means the 15th day of Shvat. So what's the connection with water? First of all, Tu B'Shvat, the new year of Tu B'Shvat is like the cattle. It's the new year for knowing which year we take which tithes. It's a whole complicated thing that we're not going to get into now, but there are different tithes that we bring in different years. And trees blossom and give fruit at different times. So we have to know when is the new year. When do we start counting a year to give a certain type of tithe? And when does that year end? So Tu B'Shvat is the new year to determine the demarcation between years of tithing. So the question is, why do we have a disagreement here? So Beit Shammai says it should be on the 1st of Shvat. So there's 2 reasons for that. One is all the other New Years are on the first day of the month, on Rosh Chodesh. So why should Tu B'Shvat be different? That's one idea. But the more fundamental idea is that there was a tradition, and this is through observation, that in Israel, the rainy season is in the winter. The summer is completely dry, virtually dry. And there's only rain in the winter. And there was a tradition that by the new year of the trees, the majority of rain has fallen. Because we're told what happens on Tu B'Shvat. The sap begins to run in the tree. The fruit trees are dormant during the winter. Most fruit trees lose their leaves. They almost look dead. And the tradition is that Tu B'Shvat, the sap, the life force of the tree begins to rise up through the tree, and that will be the life force that will give the life force for the blossoms to open, the leaves to open, the fruit to form, and the full fruitation cycle. And the tradition is that the majority of rain has fallen from the time that rain is judged. And this is where the main disagreement comes in. Beit Shammai holds that on Rosh Hashanah, everything is judged for the year, including rain. Nonetheless, there is a tradition that rain, more specifically, is judged during Sukkot. Sukkot is the 15th of the month. So Beit Shammai felt that the first day of Shvat, which is 4 months after Rosh Hashanah, that should be the New Year of the trees, because it's 4 months after the rain is judged for the year. But Hillel felt that more specifically, rain is judged during Sukkot. And for those who have been part of the series, we discussed in great detail the connections of water, rainfall, and the holiday of Sukkot. Very, very intrinsic to the holiday of Sukkot. And the sages sided with Beit Hillel, and therefore we have Tu B'Shvat is on the 15th of the month. But here the connection is all about the water, because in Eretz Yisrael, the rainfall is so important. And also we made a comment about the connection of light and water. And so there's this idea of what's called descending light, or yeshar, straight light that comes from above, and or chozer, light that comes from below. So here we can see something very beautiful, because we have the same dynamic happening on Tu B'Shvat. So for 4 months, the rain has been falling, and it will continue to fall, but enough rain has fallen that the tree actually takes the koach, the power of the water, and it activates the sap in the tree to run up the tree. So here the rain comes down, that's or yeshar, and the sap starts to rise up the tree. So here, again, we have this deep connection between light and water. So those are the 2 holidays that we wanted to complete as to their connection with water. The second idea that we're going to explore tonight is one of Rabbi Ginsburg's great innovations, is creating correspondences between ideas and the 4 letters of God's name. And in many cases, the yud, the tip of the yud, is considered a level in of itself. So sometimes there's 4 levels, sometimes there's 5 levels. And we have a verse that says, Shaviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. I put God before me at all times. So the simple understanding is I should be aware that God is present at all times, and that God is watching, God is recording, God is noticing everything that happens in the universe. So, Shaviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. I put God, I understand that God is before me at all times. At a deeper level, Chassidus explains, and Rabbi Ginsburg explains, that we could also understand it, I put the name of God before me at all times, meaning I can come to understand that everything in this world can be corresponded to the letters of God's name. So here we've been talking about for weeks now, rainfall, water, and Rav Ginsburg has arranged different types of water according to 4 letters of God's name and the tip of the Yud. And so this is how he does it, that he starts from what's called the source of water. And that's called the abyss. In Hebrew, the tahom. The tahom are we'll call it subterranean waters. On one hand, the lowest level, we'll call it the aquifers, or the source of springs that come out of the mountain. On the other hand, the tahom is coming from the source of water created by God. And as we discussed early on in the series, the very second verse of the Torah mentions water, but it doesn't mention that water was created. So here we have the idea of there's something very primordial about water, very ancient about water, that it almost has the energy of preceding this world, of being a manifestation of something totally primordial. So that's called the Tahom. And it's mentioned already in the second verse. That the earth was chaotic and void, and there was darkness on the face of these. It's called, in English we'll call it the abyss, and in Hebrew it's the tahom, is the source of primordial waters. So that is the tip of the yud, because that's the source. And then we have springs, mayanot. And they're coming usually out of the mountain, out of the ground. And this leads into rivers. And then the rivers split into streams. And the streams run into the ocean. And then from the ocean, the water evaporates and rises up and becomes clouds. And this again becomes the source of the water. And so you have a cycle, a water cycle. So we're going to go back a second, and now we're going to connect them to the letters of God's name and the sfirot. So the tip of the yud, again, this is the abyss, the tahom, and this is keter. This is the highest of the sfirot, which is figuratively above the head. And then we have the springs, and this is the yud. The yud is the smallest of the letters. And usually when a spring comes out of the mountain, it starts very with a minimal of water. It doesn't come out like the Mississippi River or the Ganges or the Nile. It comes out in a thin flow, but it continues and it builds up. And so that the yud, which starts little, then moves into the hay of God's name. The spring is chachma, wisdom, and then the rivers are bina, understanding. So you see, we're going from above to below. We're going from the abyss to the stream to the river, and that is keter, chachma, and bina. And then the rivers split into different streams. And this is what is talked about, that in Gan Eden, In the Garden of Eden, it says a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and it split into four heads. In other words, the river split into four new rivers, four streams. This is the Vav of God's name. And these are the 6 Sfirot, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. That represents the streams coming from the river. And then finally, the ocean. This is the final Hay of God's name. And this is Malchut. So there's a very beautiful verse in Ecclesiastes, in Kohelet. It says like this: Kol hanachalim holchim el hayam, v'hayam einenu maleh. All of the rivers, all of the streams flow into the ocean, the seas, but the sea is never full. The sea is never full. Why? Is because we have this cycle that, if you think about how many rivers flow into the oceans, so how come it doesn't flood the whole world again? Because we have evaporation. Every day, the enormous amount of water evaporates and becomes the clouds. And then from the clouds, we have new rain, and that is the cycle. So the ocean here is Malchut. And so as it says in Ecclesiastes, all of the rivers, all of the letters of God's name, all of the Sfirot flow into Malchut, but Malchut is never full. Malchut is a receptacle, a vessel that continually can absorb the waters flowing into it. So that is just a very beautiful idea. Again, I'll just say it in English: from the abyss to the springs, to the rivers, to the streams, into the ocean. And that's a flow from the tip of the Yud to the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, and then through the Sfirot from Keter to Malchut. And then when it gets to Malchut, again, through evaporation, it returns to the tip of the Yud. And you have this idea, Na'ut sofan b'techilatan b'sofan. The end is wedged in the beginning, and the beginning in the end. Okay, now that we've introduced the Sfirot here, another of the great innovations of Rav Ginsburg is the idea of making partsufim. A partsuf is a full stature. It's taking an idea and filling it out in all its different aspects and dimensions. And Rav Ginsburg does this through the Sfirot, because God created the world through 32 wondrous pathways of wisdom. And these are the 10 Sfirot and the 22 letters. And so everything can be incorporated into the Sfirot and the letters. So Rav Ginsburg, hundreds of times, maybe at this point, thousands of times, takes a name, a word, a concept, and shows how it manifests itself in all the different Sfirot. So we're going to do the same now with water. This is not from Rav Ginsburg. This is my insight here, but the paradigm, the model is Rav Ginsburg's. So I'm going to do this fairly quickly so we can get through all of the material tonight. So we're going to start from Keter and go to Malchut with the idea of how does water manifest in each of these. So, and again, I'm going to do this relatively quickly because much of what I'm going to mention we have discussed throughout this series. But now all we're doing is taking all these different aspects that we talked about separately, individually, and putting it together in what's called a partsuf, into one model, one paradigm. So we start with Keter, and Keter is the crown, and it represents transcendental energy, a very uplifting, superconscious type of energy. And so this is what we just mentioned, this idea that water is mentioned in the second verse, and yet it never says that water was created. It's just like there. And we've learned that anytime water is mentioned, it's an allusion to the Torah. So we have a tradition that the Torah existed before the physical world of matter and time, of space and time, that the Torah was the blueprint through which the world came into being, was the architect's plans. God is the architect, but the plans that he followed and then revealed to us was the Torah that pre-existed this world. And so there's something about water and its connection to Torah that is coming from the Keter, from the primordial, superconscious place. Then we get to Chachma, wisdom, and this is what we just said, that anytime you mention water, it relates to Torah. And it says in the Zohar that Torah comes out from Chachma. Torah comes out from Chachma. And I'll just remind everyone, Chachma is on the right side of the Sfirot. And the right side is the side of water. And the left side is the side of fire. And we're not talking about just physical water and fire, we're talking about energies, water energy and fire energy. So here at Chachma, water manifests as Torah. Torah comes out of Chachma. Bina, understanding. So this we could relate to as the water of the womb. Bina is always called the mother. Chachma is the father. Bina is the mother. So the waters of the mother are the most essential waters of the mother, are the embryonic fluid, is the womb, is the nurturing waters that allow a fetus to become a full human being. So there is a beautiful song. It's really a poem, and it's many people sing it at third meal on Shabbat. It's called Kel Mistater, a hidden God. And this Zmira, this poem, goes through the 10 Sfirot. Each stanza, the first stanza is Keter, the second stanza is about Chachma, and the third is about Bina, in very beautiful, beautiful poetic terms. So when we get to Bina, so Bina is connected to water. It says like this, Rechovot hanahar nachalei emunah. The wideness of the river, the streams of faith. Mayim amukim yidlem ish tevuna. Deep waters, these deep waters flow to a person of understanding. Totzoteha chamishim shari bina. And these waters flow into 50 gates of understanding. Again, this is very Kabbalistic imagery here, because when we talk about Bina, it's always associated with what is called the 50 gates of understanding. And the last part is Emunim Notzer Hashem, that this flow of water, this flow of understanding leads to faith and our connection to God. So I read that because of in the whole song, the only one that's connected to water per se is Bina. So Bina is the waters of understanding, the waters of the womb. The next is Dat, and the inner dimension of Dat is Yichud, is unification, because Dat appears almost in the middle of the Dat and Tiferet, between above and below and right and left. So Dat becomes the traffic circle through intellect flows into emotion, and the right corresponds with the left and is unified. And so this unification we're going to see when we come to the end of the class. This is a prophecy from Isaiah that when Mashiach comes, so it says, Malah ha'aretz deya Hashem, the earth will be full of the knowledge, Dat, of Hashem, kamayim liyam mechasim, like the waters cover the sea. And we're going to return to this idea. But here it says that the knowledge of God will cover the world like water. So that's the deep connection between water and Dat. Chesed. So Chesed is always associated with Avraham, but it's also associated with rain. That, especially in Eretz Yisrael, rainfall is considered a tremendous chesed, because the land depends on the rainwater. So when rain comes, it's an expression of chesed. Across from chesed is gevura. And it's interesting because the term used in the Talmud for rain is gevurot hagishamim, the power of rain. So here we have, on one hand, rain is chesed. On the other hand, it's gevura. But why is it called gevura? Well, when it rains for 40 days and 40 nights, it can destroy the world. And places all over the world, when there's too much rain, it causes floods. It's very, very common all over the world. And so the Gemara actually says, if we didn't need rain so much, people would pray that it would never rain, because you have to go out and your feet get wet and you have to have an umbrella and the traffic slows down and you get wet and then you have to stay in your wet clothes. And so it's like considered gevura, but it's really the greatest chesed. The next is Tiferet. Tiferet means beauty. And the connection of water to Tiferet is on the third day of creation. So there were two things happen. One is that the waters were gathered together. We'll see in a minute which sphere this is connected to. And vegetation was created. Now, there's an obvious connection between how vegetation grows and its need for water. But we know from our experience how much beauty vegetation brings to the world. Trees and bushes and flowers and lawns and meadows and all of nature it creates the beauty of the world. And so that's connected because water is what makes everything grow. Without the water, nothing would grow. So that's the connection of water to Tiferet. Netzach is always associated with Moshe. And we dedicated virtually an entire class to explore the many, many connections of Moshe and water. Like I said, we spent an entire class, and Moshe is always connected with Netzach. And so that's the connection with Netzach. Hod, so it's very connected to for those who were here from the beginning. So we played a song to the words, Yisu Naharot Hashem, Yisu Naharot Kolam, that the streams and rivers have raised themselves up, God. The voices of the rivers have raised themselves up. And so Hod means glory. And as we talked before about the mesmerizing effect of water, and the expression is when we see the beauty of nature, so we say this is Gedulat Haborei, the greatness, really the glory of God revealed for us. And so the connection of water to Hod is the glory, the wanting to praise God for the beautiful world that we have and beautiful nature. So that is connected to Hod. Yesod, so this is connected to a blessing that we say every morning. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, roka ha'oretz al hamayim, who establishes that there can be dry land on the water. Because at the time of the flood, and going back to the third day of creation, we're told that God had to bring the waters together. This is actually the first usage of the word mikvah. Mikvah means a gathering of waters. And so the waters had to be gathered together in order that there should be dry land. Because if not, the waters would cover the earth. And in fact, in many discussions of now it's called climate chaos, there is a great fear that the oceans are going to rise. And 40% of humanity lives on the coast. Whatever country it is, 40% live in cities or villages literally right next to oceans. If you just look at the east coast of America and the west coast, and so we could see that connection here in Israel. We're along the Mediterranean. Most of the population of Israel lives within a few kilometers of the Mediterranean. And if the waters rise, we have a big problem. So that's Yesod. Yesod means foundation. So the idea that there can be dry land, that's the foundation of civilization. That's the foundation of our ability to live and operate in this world, is that we have dry land. So that's Yisod, that's our foundation. That's the land that we walk on. And the last one is Malchut. And we learned that one of the qualities of water, just physically, is it will always seek the lowest place to run to. So if you put water on a flat surface, but it's not exactly flat, it's like a fraction of a centimeter not flat, the water will flow off in that direction. Water will always seek the lowest place that it can fall to, that it can run to. And this is Malchut. This is the idea of Malchut. And the inner dimension of Malchut is Shiflut, is existential lowliness, existential humbleness. And this is having a humble spirit. And this is connected to water. And the verse that we read, that all the rivers flow into the sea, but the sea is never full. And that's symbolic of Malchut, that all the water is running into Malchut. And the last connection is the ritual of Tashlich that we do on Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah, most of the prayers are involved with coronating God king. That's almost the main theme of Rosh Hashanah, is accepting upon ourselves the kingship of God. Like we do 100 times a day when we say blessings. Blessed are you, O God, King of the universe, sovereign ruler of the universe. So here we created a whole partsuf. We saw how water manifests itself in all of the different sfirot. And this is, as I said, this is one of Rav Ginsburg's great innovations of doing this in hundreds, if not thousands, of cases, of showing how everything can be envisioned and understood through putting that word or concept or name through the 10 sfirot, like we just did with water. And now the last segment of this series is a connection to water in the future. We spent a couple of weeks going through the Chumash, the Tanakh, the Gemara, different places where water appears in verses, in stories. But all of that was in the past. Past and present. But what about the future? That's how we're going to end this series. So we're just going to look at a few ideas here. And one of them is from a prophecy of Zechariah. And this prophecy is it's in the 14th chapter, and I'm going to read the 8th and 9th verse. This is one of the most messianic of all prophecies. It's actually read on the first day of Sukkot. I mentioned Sukkot has a lot to do with water. And this is just one more thing has to do with water. And it describes the last wars that don't have to happen, but may happen before Mashiach comes. And then it says, after Israel, with God's help, is redeemed. So it says, and it shall come to pass on that day that spring water shall come forth from Jerusalem, half of it to the eastern sea, and half of it to the western sea. So just geographically, the eastern sea is the Dead Sea, and the western sea is the Mediterranean. In summer and in winter it will be, meaning it will flow in summer and winter. And then it says, and God will become king over all the earth. On that day, God will be one and his name one. So here we see that, and this last thing, that, and God will be king over all of the earth. On that day, God will be one and his name one. We say every single day, 3 times a day in the Aleinu. V'nemar v'haya Hashem lemelech al kol ha'oretz, v'yom hahu yiyeh Hashem echad u'shmo echad. That's how we end our morning, afternoon, and evening prayers with this verse. But what comes right before it is this idea that the symbol of redemption will be that water will come out, not just of Jerusalem, but we're actually told it will come out from the Temple Mount. And it will flow year round, and half will go to the east and half will go to the west. And this is symbolic of water is Torah. And we say, Ki mitzion teitzei Torah u'devar Hashem Yerushalayim, because the Torah will come out of Zion and from Yerushalayim. And this is talking about in the future, that Torah will go to the whole world, will be revealed to the whole world from the Temple Mount, from Zion, from Yerushalayim. So here we see water is, in a sense, the symbol and the physical manifestation of the redemption of the Messianic era. So that's just a very, very important idea. And then we bring the verse that we said already, that, and this is from Isaiah, Malah ha'aretz dea et Hashem, kamayim liyam mechasim, that the knowledge of God will cover the world like the waters cover the sea. And the Rambam, Maimonides, in his classic work, the Mishnah Torah, so the last 2 chapters deal with Mashiach. They're part of the law of kings. And Mashiach is called Melech HaMashiach, the king, the messianic king. And so the last 2 chapters are the Rambam's concept and his bringing traditions about what it will be like when Mashiach comes. And he ends with this verse, which is the end of his whole masterpiece, the Mishnah Torah. But his final statement about what it will be like when Mashiach comes is this idea that the knowledge of God will cover the world like the waters cover the sea. Again, water is being used as the metaphor. And the reason is because water is life-giving. Water purifies. And water represents Torah. So when we say that the knowledge of God will cover the world like the waters cover the sea, we're saying that basically that the knowledge of Torah will spread to the whole world. And the inner dimension of Torah will be revealed. And now we're going to end with one last idea. It's an idea that many people have heard, but this is the right place to put it, is a statement in the Zohar. And the Zohar says in the 600th year of the 6th millennium, the waters of the Tahom, like we discussed, the lower waters will rise up and will flood the world, and the upper waters will descend like a flood into the world, all in preparation for the Messianic era. So this is a statement in the Zohar. So what does it mean? So first of all, let's establish what is the 600th year of the 6th millennium. So the 600th year, we are in the 6th millennium. We're at 5874 now. So the 600th year of the 6th millennium is 5600 in the Jewish year, which is 1840 in the Gregorian calendar. 1840. But just like when someone turns, let's say, 10 years old, and so if someone asks them, how old are you? I'm 10. For the whole year, I'm 10. But really, they're in their 11th year. Their birthday actually ends their 10th year. So 1840 is really the century between 1740 and 1840. So what are the lower waters that will rise up and flood the world? This is secular knowledge and the application of secular knowledge. So if we look at 1740 to 1840, so what we see is until 1740, basic lifestyle of human beings on this planet didn't change very much. In other words, in 1740, if you wanted to get from one place to another, you either rode a donkey or an ox or a horse, and you had a carriage. Maybe over the years, they learned to make better wheels, maybe better carriages, but nothing changed all that much for thousands of years. Wanted to get someplace by boat? Well, you have a rowboat, and that's how you're going to get there, a sailboat. 1740 was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And quite literally, everything changed. First, you had the steam engine, and then all of a sudden that was applied to agriculture, to boats, to industry. And then you had railroads, and then you had the telegraph, and then you had the telephone. And it's hard to believe, but Kitty Hawk, 1906, I believe, is only like 100 and, less than 120 years ago. And we went from a flight of like, 30 or 40 seconds to shooting rockets towards Mars. So the idea is the waters that are flooding the world, and of course, then you have telephone, and you have computers, and now we have our everything in the palm of our hand. So the technological advances have flooded the world. So what are the upper waters from above? So the Baal Shem Tov revealed himself. He was born in 1698. He revealed himself in 1734, right before 1740. And the Baal Shem Tov, this was a water, what's the expression? A watershed in Jewish history and how it will affect the world. But the Baal Shem Tov took the hidden teachings of the Torah that had been fairly secret and only available to the few people in every generation. And he opened up the inner dimensions of the Torah to everyone. That's why you can walk into a bookstore now and you can get every Kabbalistic book, every book of Chassidus in translation in so many different languages. It's all available. So there's been a flood of water from below and a flood of water from above. And this is the idea of unifying physical and spiritual, body and soul, secular knowledge and Torah wisdom. And this is the wave of the future. This is the avoda of the Mashiach. There's a tremendous Rashi when Moshe is going back to Egypt after God revealed himself at the burning bush. So the verse says that Moshe put his wife on the donkey. So you would think, so okay, what is there to talk about? The Torah is telling us he put his wife on the donkey. So Rashi says, this is no ordinary donkey. This is the same donkey that Abraham saddled when he took Yitzchak to the Akedah, and it will be the same donkey that Mashiach comes riding on. So what is Rashi telling us here? This is what, a 4,000-year-old donkey? So I heard this from Rav Ginsburg explain that the word for donkey in Hebrew is chamor. That same word means materialism, physicality, chumriyut. Raw materials is called chomer gelam. So Avram, Moshe, and Mashiach represent a process of spirituality harnessing, of directing physicality and ultimately unifying with it. So Avram saddled the donkey, Moshe put his wife on the donkey, and Mashiach will come riding on the donkey. He will be the one who can master physical and spiritual and unifying them, and of course teaching the whole world of how to do this. And of course, this is the secret of all of the mitzvot. Virtually all the mitzvot are connected to a physical action, a physical object, and speech. And speech is considered an action. And so every mitzvah we do, we are attempting to unify the physical world and infuse it with spiritual content, with spiritual energy and light. And this is the overall mission. And so the Zohar was saying that, remember, this prediction ends with all in preparation for the Messianic era. So everything that is happening now is in preparation for the Messianic era, the creation of a global village, a physical, economic global village. And now we're hoping and waiting for the creation of a spiritual global village. That is the idea of Mashiach, that Mashiach will, as it were, turn everyone on to God in Torah, and will unify the physical global village with the spiritual global village. But here, I'm ending with this because the Zohar used the metaphor of water again. that the secular knowledge will flood the world, and spiritual wisdom of the Torah will flood the world. And so both of those floods will come together. And this is, again, connected to the water coming out of Jerusalem, out of the temple at the time of Mashiach. And the knowledge of God covering the world like the waters cover the sea. So all of this is using the metaphor of water because of the spiritual nature of water. So with this, we conclude our series on the spiritual nature of water. And the next subject will be announced next week. We're working on it. And I just want to bless everyone that here we're talking about water in the future, but the blessing is that water that was spoken about in the future should be manifest now. We should see it now. We should experience it now. And Bezrat Hashem, we will. Recording.